Hello everyone. In this session, I want to talk about connecting to on-premise systems and getting the data in SAP Cloud Platform Cloud Foundry environment. So I have this resource URL. So this is my on-premise system, and I also have a cloud connector. And I'm not going to be talking about setting up the cloud connector in this session, but what I've done is this domain right here. This is mapped to this virtual host. So the outside world can only see ICS4:9001, and it internally maps to this internal host right here. And this is the URL, and this is the domain that I want to consume. And particularly in this OData service, I want to consume this material entity set. So I want to get the material text. So let's see how we can do this. In the previous session, I had shown you how to connect to Northwind, which is publicly available on the internet. So we'll follow the exact same steps. So I'm not going to change anything at all. I'm just going to follow the exact same steps, and I'm going to connect to this on-premise system. So I go into my SAP Business Application Studio, and the first thing I want to do is I want to go into my manifest.json and create my model. So since I've already done this, and if you haven't seen that previous video, please do so, because that is the prerequisite. And you can also follow along by cloning the GitHub. You want to clone part 2, so that's where we start off. Part 3 is the finished product. So what I'm going to do is I need this model, so I'm going to copy this model for the Northwind, and I'm just going to use this for my on-premise system as well. So I can simply copy and paste this. Now, obviously, the name, I need to change this. So I'm going to call this on-prem service. And also the URL, I need to change this. So the URL that I need to specify here is if I go into my service document here, I don't want the host name, but everything from the host name onwards, I'll take this and I'll go ahead and paste it in my URL. So that's basically what we had done with Northwind as well. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. So nothing different, everything same as what I had done before. And again, here, I want to do the same thing as well. So I'm going to paste this here as well. Let me remove one of them. Okay, so what we have now is we have the on-prem service defined in manifest.json, and I also want to create a model. So I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to paste it again, and this will be my model. And again, so we already took the default model, so that's has no name. So this has to have a name, so I'm going to call it on-prem model. And this needs to be on-prem service, and this needs to be the same name that we provided right here. So this is the same name that I'm going to provide here as well. Okay, so now we've done this, the same thing we've done before for Northwind. So basically copy and pasted it for the on-premise system. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to go into my app router, access app JSON. And again, same thing I want to do. I'm going to copy this route. I'm going to create a new route. And what the app router can do is it can route the request based on the URL. And here we are not going to look for v2. What I'm going to look for is this right here. So anytime I see SAP OPU, OData, SAP, I'm going to route it to something else. So if I see this, I don't want to route it to Northwind API. I want to route it to Sales API. Again, we haven't defined this destination, so we'll define this destination soon. So authentication, I'm going to set it for basic because this has basic authentication. So pretty much same steps that I have done for Northwind. I'm just doing it for the on-prem as well. So far, I haven't deviated a single bit so far. Now, we also need some kind of a UI to see this data. So I'm going to go into my appview.xml. And again, I'm going to copy the same thing and pasting it. So here, obviously, I don't want products, I want material. And it's going to be a named model. So I'm going to call the model was named on-prem model, so I'm going to use that name. And here on-prem model, and then I want the material text. So this is what I'm going to display. So this is going to be material text. So far, I haven't changed anything out of the ordinary, so everything is pretty straightforward. Now we don't have the sales API, so what we're saying is if you see this in the URL, redirect to sales_API. So this is the destination. So let's go ahead and create this destination in Cloud Foundry. But in the meantime, as we are creating the destination, I'm also going to deploy the app to Cloud Foundry as well. So we can kind of make a good use of our time. So as this is being deployed, I'll create the destination. So I'm going to deploy the app to Cloud Foundry. And then in my Cloud Foundry, I go into my Cloud Foundry. I already have my demo_destination. And if you don't know how I got this, please check out the previous video. So here I go into my destinations, and here I want to create a new destination called sales_API. So I'll call it sales_API. Now this is going to be HTTP. Now here, what I want to do is I want to connect to http://ICS4:9001. And the reason I want to connect to this is the way I have set up my cloud connector. So this internal host, it maps to this virtual host right here. So this is where is my, yeah, so this is where I want to connect to internet. It's not internet, so I want to change it to on-premise. Now this is going to have some kind of a basic authentication, so I'm going to give my username and password to connect to this on-premise system. Now here, for this additional properties, I'm going to have the same properties that I had for Northwind. And I'm not sure if I do need some of these properties, but I'm just going to give it anyways. So the Web IDE system, I'm going to call it sales_API. Then I'll create a new thing called SAP Web IDE usage, and I'll call it odata_gen. I'll have another one called Web IDE system. Web IDE enabled, and I can name this true. And I'll have another property called HTML5.dynamic destination. And this also needs to be set to true. Okay, so I have this destination created. Let me check if this is working. Okay, so it is able to connect to this this URL. And let's check the status of, okay, still going on. So basically what we've done, pretty much the same steps that we have followed for creating the Northwind application. So the application is actually now complete as well. So if I go into my Cloud Foundry and I go into my demo application, so we followed pretty much the same steps, just because I just created the destination, the sales_API destination. I'm going to restart this application, and then once it restarts, let's see what happens. So if you look at this, if you look at the UI that we've built, we left the UI that shows the Northwind products, and then right underneath is where we have the materials from the on-prem model. So here, let me run it. And when I run it, it's going to go to the cloud, the Fiori Launchpad. I click on it. Now it should run the application. So you can see that there are two list items, and you can see that the other list didn't show up. It says no data. So it was able to go to the Northwind, get the data, and it was not able to go to the on-prem and get the data, even though we did the exact same steps for as we did for the Northwind publicly available OData service, we are not able to get the data for the on-prem. Now, how do we fix this, right? Because we want to get the data for the on-prem as well. Now, the fix is fairly straightforward. What we have to do is we have to create what is called a connectivity service and bind that to our application. And then once we do that, and once this is working, I'll kind of go through why we had to do this. Okay. So here I go into my team 209, that's my space. I go into my service instance. Actually, let me go to service marketplace. So I need to create what is called a connectivity service. So here I see in my marketplace, I see connectivity. So I create connectivity service. I can just go through these steps right here. I can create a new instance. And so let me go ahead, create a new instance. I'll choose the light plan. I'll just take all the defaults and the instance name. I can give any name. I'll just call it my demo connectivity. So I know it's associated with this application. So I've created this connectivity service. Now, if I go into my instance, I should see there is my demo connectivity, but it's not bound to any application at this time. So we just created this. So let's go ahead and bind it to our application. So I'm going to bind it to my demo application. So that's all we did. We just created my demo connectivity and we bound it to our application. Now, just for good measure, I like to restart my application because we bound a new service. So let me go ahead and restart this application, my demo application. And now that we have bound this connectivity service, I'm hoping that this should all work right now. So in addition to getting the data from the Northwind service, we should also get data from the on-premise system as well. And as you can see here, we do have the data from the on-premise system. So how did this all work? So let's have a quick look into how this all worked, because previously it was not showing up, and all we did was we created connectivity service, we bound it to our application, and lo and behold, we have the data from the on-premise system. So let's kind of quickly peek into the back end and see what the hell happened. So I have a few slides for this, and let me go ahead and start with the slideshow. Okay, so SAP Cloud Platform Connectivity. So let's kind of see how it works. So in the new environment, we only have one service. I mean, whatever we did for on-prem, the same thing we can do for the publicly available service. So we would just create a destination and everything would work. Whereas in Cloud Foundry, we noticed that there are two services, and these two services together do what in Neo environment, what the connectivity service does. So there is the destination service that we were able to store the technical information about the resources and all of that stuff. And then there was the connectivity service. So these two together in the Cloud Foundry does the same job that the connectivity service in the Neo environment was doing. So let's kind of look into what this Cloud Foundry destination service does in the next screen. In the very first session, right, when we talked with the publicly available Northwind OData service, all we did was we created a destination service. We created a destination service, we gave all these values right here, and our app was able to go to this destination service, and it was able to get the data, and it was able to display it to us. So this destination service, I put a check mark right here when it is a web application or remote service. So it can do this. Now, it failed miserably when it came to on-premise systems. So we did the exact same steps. We created this destination service. We put on-premise. But we noticed that it was not able to go and fetch the data from the on-premise system. So I put a red mark against it. Now, so based on looking at what we have so far, we can conclude these two things, right? So the scenarios that the destination service can be used is if you want to connect to any other web application. So by this I mean publicly available application. Then you can just simply use the destination service and you can get away with it. Now you can also use it for another scenario, and that is what we also did, perhaps unknowingly, is we use this destination service as a way to hold all these values for us. So all these connection details, just the values, it was able to hold it for us. And then we were able to kind of use it. I mean, we were not able to connect to the on-prem system, but we were able to use all of these values. For example, it was able to use my username credentials. It knew where to go, ICS 49001 and so on. So it was able to use all these values, but it didn't connect, but it was able to use this as a storage facility for these values. So destination service in Cloud Foundry, you can use it for these two things. Now, the connectivity service, on the other hand, once we created the connectivity service, now this was able to go and talk to the cloud connector, and it was able to go to the back end, get the data, and then provide that data to us. So in Cloud Foundry, they have kind of split this thing into two different services. One is the destination service and the other is the connectivity service. Now the connectivity service is the one that's able to make the connection to the on-prem system, get the data from the on-prem system and pass it on to our application. So in a sense, it's kind of acting as a HTTP proxy. So here is kind of an architecture of how this whole thing works. So here you have the SAP Cloud Platform, Cloud Foundry, obviously. You have the users, the browsers, the desktop, and so on. And what they are doing is they're connecting to the app router first, right? Because everything, this is the single entry point to your application. So the app router. Now this takes you to your web application. Now, this web application now wants to talk to an on-prem system. So when it wants to talk to an on-prem system, first it goes to the destination service, and then it gets all the information for the host name, the port, the credentials. It gets all that information because the destination service, when it comes to on-prem, acts more like a storage facility. And then it passes all that information to this connectivity service, and this connectivity service has the ability to make connection to the cloud connector, so it can get the data on behalf of the web application from the cloud connector, essentially acting as a proxy to get the data and then passing it on to the web application. So that's how it works. Now, if we were to go to a publicly available service, then we don't need this. This destination service has the capability to go to any Northwind or any publicly available OData service to get the data. But if you want to go talk to this cloud connector on-prem system, then you need this connectivity service. So in Neo, they were both the same. There was just one single service that did the same, that did all of this. In Cloud Foundry, they have split it into two. So maybe there's a little bit, yeah. So they just split it into two services here. Now, many of you may ask, hey, why did they split it into two services? In Neo, we only had a single service that can do everything, connect to the internet, connect to on-prem. I'm not exactly sure why they split it into two services, but this is my best guess, and I believe this may be true. Now, this the number one guess is it falls in line with Cloud Foundry's multi-cloud strategy. So Neo is SAP proprietary, so we had full control of how we can connect to the backend systems and all of that good stuff. But with the SAP Cloud Foundry environment, this can be hosted in AWS, Azure, or any other cloud provider for that matter. So it makes sense to have a separate service that focuses on just connecting to on-premise systems because of some nuance, like there may be some differences in the different cloud providers. So that is my best guess. And also Cloud Foundry application applications themselves are stateless, and it is common for them to use services, and you can get all these information from VCAP environment variables as well. These are my guesses why they split it into two services, but making use of these two services is fairly straightforward, like you have seen. In all you have to do if you're going to connect to an on-premise system is you create this. You create the destination, put all the values in there, and then you create a connectivity service and bind it to your application. Okay, that's it, folks. If you have questions, let me know. Thanks.